a devoted fan, and a plugged-in reporter. There is no better way to talk about hoops than that. Mia O'Brien and Mitch Northam have you covered for the W, the NCAA, Unrivaled, and anything else that involves a ball and a backboard. This is the Women's Basketball Podcast.
Mitch Northam, I'm not going to be like my fellow Ithaca College bomber John Rothstein and issue a public service announcement to America. I will simply say, February is here. We are recording this week's episode on Super Bowl Monday, the day after Super Bowl 60. And well, yes, the Super Bowl is coming to ESPN, ABC, and the Walt Disney Company. Basketball season, folks, is in full swing. Welcome to the 2025-2026 Women's College Hoop season. Oh, and Unrivaled's going on, and the WNBA, CBA negotiations as well. There's a lot to get to, whether you've been hanging out with us each week here at the Women's Basketball Podcast, or if you're just finding us in your podcast network because you want to get caught up on the very latest in the women's hoops game. Mia O'Brien, USA Today's Mitch Northam. We do this little show each and every week to get you caught up to speed on who's hot, who's not, and what beef exists in the world of women's hoops. Mitch, you may or may not have been directly involved in this week's beef. How are you doing on this fine Monday evening, sir?
I'm good. We're less than a week away until the Daytona 500, and less than 5 weeks away from Selection Sunday. So
I want you to know that when I explained to my mother that my other employer, ESPN, has the Super Bowl next year, and it will be on Valentine's Day, which is why we did a Splitsville segment on Countdown to 61 yesterday. I don't know. I did the overnight kickoff.
What is time?
I don't know what day it is, which will be fun for today's episode. But I had to explain to her that don't worry, the Daytona 500 is now going to be the 21st of February in 2027. They pushed it up a week because she was very concerned about the 500 conflicting with the Super Bowl. And I said, don't worry. NASCAR is safe. Women's basketball also safe, because I thought that the schedule gods that be did a tremendous job of leading into the big game with some marquee matchups that we are going to discuss today. Unfortunately, where we begin this week's starting five, Mitch, this was the game that was supposed to be the game to lead into watching the Seahawks and the Patriots, that being South Carolina and Tennessee, two of the most storied programs in the SEC, going at it in a top 25 tilt. And final score, South Carolina 93, Tennessee 50. That is the largest margin of defeat in Lady Vols program history. It's also South Carolina's largest win over a ranked opponent in program history. I should note, before I get to the real reason that this is number one in this week's starting five, that 96-66 loss to UConn 1 week ago that we led last week's program with, that was 1 point away from the worst loss in Tennessee program history. Mitch, I'm going to turn this over to you because I'm fascinated by the discourse surrounding the post-game comments, which I feel like are more of the story than the 43-point drubbing at the hands of the Gamecocks.
I think for the second straight week, it is best that I go to the transcripts and read our listeners what it is that Killer Kim Caldwell said after the game. So this is after the loss to South Carolina. Opening statement. This is right off the rip. A lot of quitting us tonight, and that's been something consistent with our team. We're not comfortable, and things don't go our way. And I have a team that just quits on you, and you can't do that in big games. You can't do that anywhere, anytime in the SEC, but you certainly can't do it at a program like this. It goes on later. Someone asked, you mentioned this team having a lot of quit today. When you're in February, how do you fix a team that quit? They have to fix it. They have to decide they want to fix it. What's the reaction when the game is starting to snowball? I don't necessarily know that they're sitting there defeated. I don't know that. I do know that we don't have the leadership we need player-wise, and we've talked about it for a couple of weeks. So that's where we're at with Tennessee and Kim Caldwell. And this is, I saw Tennessee in week one when they played their season opener in Greensboro against NC State. And Kim Caldwell was, she didn't say it like this, but she was kind of talking about like wanting to have some leadership and like the players need to step up and all that stuff. She was talking about this back then. Now we're in mid-February the vibes are not good in Knoxville, Tennessee. I think that this season is a lost cause, to be honest with you. Like, Tennessee's not going to miss the tournament. Their metrics are too good for that. I think, I'm going to pull up their schedule real quick just to make sure that nothing catastrophic can really happen.
While you do that, I do want to note this week's latest AP poll is out. And the Tennessee Volunteers are still somehow in it despite this 43-point loss. They are ranked 22nd in the latest AP poll.
Yeah, I didn't rank them this week. But so they play Missouri next. That's a win. They're going to play Texas A&M. That's also a win. In the middle of that, though, they got Texas, at Ole Miss, at Oklahoma, at LSU, and against Vanderbilt. So, like, they're going to lose a lot, and they might limp into the tournament as like an 8 or a 9 seed, or maybe even like on the bubble. But I don't think they're going to miss the tournament. However, I feel pretty confident in saying they're going to get bounced in the first or second round. Like, this is not a team that's going to surprise us and make it to the second week of the tournament like they did last year. I just think, as evidenced by what we've seen on the court in the past couple games and what Kim Caldwell is saying publicly in these press conferences, this team isn't buying whatever she's selling. This team is not with her. They don't trust her. They don't believe in her. And I don't know how you can't solve that in mid-February. Like, it just is what it is. And so I feel like we're heading for a Tennessee offseason where you're going to see a pretty drastic, probably roster reshuffle and maybe a staff reshuffle as well.
And I got a little intel that, yes, especially that second part, that could be, we could be trending that way.
Yeah.
Which
I think on that note, I think, somebody like Gabe Lazo, is somebody who could be a head coach in this upcoming cycle. Especially if, he's from Florida, especially if UCF or USF opens. He could be in the mix for those.
UCF to open personally at this juncture. And I've had that verified as well. So I would expect UCF to open. I'm curious what the perception of that job is in the Big 12, which is a hot mess that we'll get to here in just a second. But no, Kim's not going anywhere.
No, she got that big raise and extension last spring, and she's now, one of the $1 million head coaches in women's college basketball.
I think this is much more about two philosophical points. Number one, the idea of a head coach in 2026, and maybe this is more forward thinking, that she says, you know what, this group, I do have to light a fire under their butt in February and let them know, you're not going to be here next year if this is the attitude you're going to have. And yes, maybe that divides the locker room and pits her players against her, but she doesn't care because she's going to recruit over them next year. And if that's the case, that is an evolution of coaching, which brings us to the quote from Dawn Staley, who, after Kim spoke to the media following the Tennessee loss to South Carolina, Dawn Staley said when she was asked if she'd give any advice to Kim, she said, for me, I probably wouldn't say it publicly. That's number one, the Q word, which I have heard from enough people around the National Football League that as soon as you say the word quit, it's over. So the fact that the head coach said it, I do agree with Dawn. Two, you just got to get your team to buy in, and sometimes it's tricking them because it's a game. It's a game that you really have to balance and play with the players because they know they play like bleep, right? They know that they did. Sometimes you need to bring what good happened if you can find some good in it. In addition to being employed by ESPN, I am employed by the University of North Florida's leadership department. I don't want to go leadership professor on you, Mitch, but I respect Dawn's more cerebral approach to it. But my question is, I wouldn't say it's outdated what Dawn said, because Liam Cohen did the same thing when the Jags got absolutely whacked by the Rams in London. The first thing he did at that Monday morning meeting was he played all their highlights. And so I do agree philosophically with you have to point out the good, but judging by what you experienced on opening day and what we saw this past weekend, I think Kim's already done that. And so now she's just trying to come up with new ideas of how to
we don't know. Maybe behind the scenes in these film sessions, he's already tried the positive reinforcement thing. And now it's just like, all right, well, now it's time to call a spade a spade.
I mean, in case you missed last week's episode, and then we got to move on to number 2, they were our beef of the week, folks, because the players straight up showed up late to shoot around. So, no offense, but it is not Kim Caldwell's job to go to the dorms, to go to the apartments and pry her players to go to shoot around. Like that's not her job. And so, yeah, I think she's going to completely flip the roster. Not unprecedented. Our friend Brenda Freese at Maryland did that, not for these same reasons necessarily. And so if she flips the roster, she flips the roster. So
I do just want to add to kind of the messiness of this situation. We had DJ Paldo, who, I believe he is the father of Maya and Mia Paldo, if I have that right. Mm-hmm. And he tweeted out something after yesterday's game, basically saying, so it's a photo, I believe this is of Maya Caldwell, showing her eye. It looks like she got hit in the eye. And it says, hit twice in the face in the first quarter, played the first half with no contact lens, which certainly explains the bad misses. Still, both her and my okay, so this is Mia Paldo, locked on D while handling and sharing the ball well. I can assure you, never, in all caps, any quit in Paldo. So we have a parent subtweeting.
Do we have a LeVar Ball situation? We have a LeVar Ball situation at Tennessee?
We have a parent subtweeting the head coach, is what we have.
At least we don't have the discourse of, well, it's because it's South Carolina and that's the style in which they play. Okay, we're not going to go down that road. There's a lot of beef to get to, including the biggest beef of them all, but we got to get through this week's starting five first. Let's get to number 2, a team that you cover closely, the North Carolina Tar Heels. The vibes are good for the men's team and the women's team these days, Mitch.
Yeah, I went to North Carolina's win over Clemson. It wasn't pretty. But the Tar Heels prevail. They have now. I was also at their win at NC State on Monday. We had a lot of three wins in 1 week for the Tar Heels. So they have now won 7 games in a row. They are 21st in the AP Top 25 poll. I think there's still a chance for them to play their way into a top 16 seed. Just judging by the rest of their schedule. They have to play Duke twice. They have to play the Virginia schools, and then you have 2 circle wins against SMU and Pitt. But yeah, North Carolina's playing well. I wish I could kind of credit this to like one thing or the other, but I think this is a good just all around coaching job by Courtney Banghart. Like they're kind of figuring it out on the fly. Like the lineups are kind of different every game. Like sometimes it's Alina Arancillo doing stuff. Sometimes it's India Navarre grabbing the O board off her own miss against NC State to win that game. Sometimes it's Renaya Kelly. Sometimes it's Lainey Grant. Often it's Lainey Grant. Lainey Grant is playing really well right now. The big thing for North Carolina is their defense. Clemson had 1 field goal made in the fourth quarter of that game. And, they just made it really, really difficult on Clemson to kind of get going and do what they do. The one concern that I have for North Carolina that I asked Courtney Banghart about afterwards is they are like one of the worst teams in the nation when it comes to getting to the free throw line. I think I looked it up after they played Clemson, and they're like in the 300s in free throw rate and percentage of points from the free throw line. So like that's a problem. And I think we saw in their game at NC State. And now my phone.
Are you Adam Schefter-ing me right now, Mitch Northam? This is a first.
With technical difficulties, because as we know, as listeners and watchers on YouTube might know, I have to plug my phone into my laptop camera so we have good video quality.
Is it just a spam call?
Yes, it was. We don't need to answer it.
There we go.
Nothing important. So anyway, so North Carolina is playing really, really well. I think there's a chance that they might just be ACC good, but we'll see. They're going to play Duke this Sunday on ABC, nationally televised game. We'll get into that later. But they're playing really well right now. The free throws are a concern. I think sometimes the flow of the offense and the 3-point shooting is a concern, but that defense is really, 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 really good. So Indy Navarre, Nyla Harris, Lainey Grant, all playing well. Need a couple other players to step up, but it's also a really deep team. Like Nyla Brooks went off on Sunday against Wake Forest, hit a bunch of 3-pointers and played well. So things are looking good for the Tar Heels.
And they are looking good for the Blue Devils as well, since I know we received some listener feedback that you guys want to talk about Duke, who we may or may not have buried alive once upon a time on this podcast. They're number 4 in this week's starting 5, so
We'll
stick
get
a
to
pin
them.
in them. We will get to them. I am curious, though, Mitch, because last week we taped on Sunday after that monster Super Sunday, February 1st slate, because you were going to the Play for K game between UNC and NC State. Are the Wolfpack cooked? Is it over? Are they making the tournament? Like what? Like where do we stand with Westmore's squad?
I just think that NC State is just kind of they're another team that like they are ACC good, but like not even ACC good enough to beat North Carolina or Duke. Like I think Duke is going to smoke them when they play next Thursday. I still believe like what I've been saying about NC State all season. They really lack leadership on the court, like in a bus driver. I felt like during that North Carolina game, the only player that was trying on both ends of the floor was Zam Jones. There were multiple times where like I felt like Zoe Brooks and Camille Pierre were just taking defensive possessions off. And, you know, I mean, there were a couple of times where like Zoe Brooks was slow closing out and slow getting back and let Renee Kelly get open, and she torched him for a couple threes. Camille Pierre tries really, really hard on offense and is a really, really great rebounder. And on defense, she kind of sleeps through possession sometimes. I think Toda Trigger, when she's not getting her post touches on offense, she kind of falls like when she's not involved, she kind of falls out of the game a little bit. And so I think that's a problem. Like there's just nobody kind of asserting authority like on the floor and like gathering that group together. And it's the bus driver thing again. Like they just don't have it. There's talent there individually and sometimes collectively, but I just don't see this team making the second weekend of the NCAA tournament. They're definitely not going to be good enough to host games. They're not a top 16 seed. I don't see them making, you know, the final of the ACC title game. This is who they are. They're a mid-tournament team.
Maybe Wes needs to talk to Kayla Kim since they're both looking for some leadership.
I think Tennessee's problems are a lot greater than NC State's. Like, okay. I don't think – like, NC State, like, you know, they fought against Carolina, but, like, everything just looks so disjointed on offense for them sometimes. And, again, like, it's a lot of, like, the your turn, my turn stuff instead of just playing like a team and letting the offense flow. Like, there's so many times where Zam Jones is trying to orchestrate an offensive action and Zoe Brooks is just standing in the corner. And, like,
waiting for the ball.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of a team that plays like a team, number 3 in this week's starting 5. Honestly, if there was a way we could have snuck it in earlier, we would have. Final score, UCLA 69, nice. Michigan 66. But the Wolverines are the story because that is the team that last week when we did our way too early Final Four predictions, Mitch, I let you have the honors. You have the Wolverines going to Phoenix and the Final Four in your updated Final Four because for good reason. Like this team is so fun to watch.
Yeah.
Look, outside of the random 64-52 loss at Washington, Michigan has lost 3 other games. All 3 have been by 3 points or less. And that includes losing to UConn, now UCLA and Vandy, 3 top 15 teams at the time that they played. And obviously UConn and UCLA, top 3 teams in their own right. Now, what for me was interesting about this one, it was in Ann Arbor. If this game was played in Westwood, I think maybe we're talking about a different final score. Sure. UCLA made some uncharacteristic errors. I don't think you're going to see Gabriela Jaquez ever miss free throws in the final 45 seconds of a game ever again, just because that's not her game. Kiki Rice proved me wrong. Was very impressed. 20 minutes. 20 points in 36 minutes. She was decisive. Stuffed the stat sheet. Stand up, Kiki. But I don't really care about UCLA. I was much more fixated on Olivia Olson, who I think we need to start talking about as a top 5 bus driver in the country. I think Mila Holloway is coming into her own, especially as a facilitator. And look, yes, Silas Swartz took that awful 3 as there's 2 seconds left on the clock. She just had to get a shot up and it looked ugly. But when she's been on, and she's been a her of the week on this show before because she can go nuclear from three as well. And that's that three-headed monster from their freshman campaign, now all sophomores. And so, look, this is a Michigan team that I would not want to see at any juncture of the NCAA tournament. I thought it was an awesome atmosphere in Ann Arbor, too. I don't think, again, that it exposed any weaknesses for UCLA outside of the fact that if they do have to go on the road in a hostile environment, perhaps the score is a little tighter than what we see when they play in the friendly confines of Los Angeles.
Yeah. My thing, I still think Michigan could make it to the Final Four. And I think that because this is a team that's not scared of anybody. Nope. There's no back down in them. Like, we have now seen them. Like, I think most people would say that the best two teams in the country this year are UConn and UCLA. You could quibble with Texas and South Carolina, whatever.
We're going to talk about them in a little bit. Don't worry.
Yeah. But Michigan has now taken both of them to the brink, losing by 3 points in each game, a single possession. Michigan's not going to be scared of – they're probably going to be a number 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. They're not going to be scared of whoever the 1 seed is in their region. And that 1 seed is not going to be happy that Michigan is on the other side of their bracket. And, I mean, yeah, the three-headed monster, like you mentioned, like – I'm sure Michigan would be fine if they saw UConn or UCLA again. I'm guessing that Silas Swords is going to shoot a lot better if she sees UCLA again. And yeah, Olivia Olson is on a heater right now, and Mila Holloway coming into her own as well. They're a good team. They're a really good team. And maybe this might be a rematch we see in the Big Ten title game in Indianapolis.
I will leave you with this, Mitch, on the thought about the Michigan Wolverines. They play 1 senior in their rotation. They have 5 sophomores in the rotation. It's unreal. Like, this is the floor. And that's what, if you're a team in the Big Ten, look out. I don't think the Wolverines are going anywhere so long as all those players are retained, which I think they got enough, up there in Ann Arbor that they'll be able to keep them around for a hot minute longer. Let's get to number 4. Let's head back to the triangle. The one that you've been waiting for, Kara Lawson. We have nice things to say about you. You are doing hard better. Proud of you guys.
Yeah, Duke is legit. Duke has now won 15 games in a row. That's their longest winning streak under Kara Lawson. That's their longest winning streak period since 2013. They went into Louisville and won for the first time ever at Louisville, 59-58. Great game from Toby Fournier. And then they just eviscerated SMU at home on Sunday by nearly 60 points. So there was that. Things not going well at SMU for Adia Barnes. Duke is, I think we should consider them to be the favorite in the ACC again, though I wouldn't be shocked if we get a Louisville-Duke rematch in the ACC title game and Louisville wins that. I still think Louisville is really good. But Duke's defense is just fantastic. And Courtney Banghart actually talked about this after the Clemson game. Like, what makes Duke's defense so good is you have all 5 players who can switch on all 5 positions. And so they can play one-on-one defense with anybody. And they don't have to double. Basketball. Yeah, they don't have to double. They don't have to play zone. They can play you straight up no matter what the switch is. And when you have that kind of basketball IQ and athleticism and just defensive acumen, you're going to be really hard to beat. And I was talking with somebody else about this, but Duke is not deep right now, right? Jaden Donovan, it came out today, is ruled out for the year. As I reported last month, Emily Skinner out for the year. So they basically have a 7-player rotation with a sprinkling of an 8th player in there. But I wrote about at USA Today about Ariana Robertson, who is their redshirt freshman who comes off the bench, who is 6'4" and has a 6'8" wingspan. And over her last 9 games is shooting north of 40% from three-point land. And, redshirt freshman, was injured all last year. She was a McDonald's All-American, one of the top 20 prospects in the country. When you have a player like that coming off your bench, that's pretty good. So you have this great athletic forward in Toby Fournier in the starting lineup. She's your superstar. You have these 2 veteran guards in Tyena Mayer and Ashlyn Jackson. They're taking care of business right now. And I think that I wouldn't be surprised if they just run the table in the ACC. Now they got 2 tough ones coming up. They're going to play 2 rivals at home. They have North Carolina on Sunday, NC State next Thursday. But other than that, like, you know, even if Duke splits with North Carolina, I would still consider them the favorite to win the ACC. And I think they are firmly in the mix to host top 16 games, top 16 seed to host games in the NCAA tournament, which means I don't get to travel opening weekend. I get to stay home and cover games at Duke. So
good, considering you'll be racking up the miles for the regional weekend of Sweet 16 and Elite 8, and then of course headed out to Phoenix. So hey, listen,
yes, I will be in Phoenix, and I'm pretty sure I'll be going somewhere for a Power 4 conference tournament. I'm just not sure which one yet. So
we will keep you guys posted on that. But I would be remiss if I didn't say, Mitch, TBT to when Emily Skinner was going to be the focal point, the best player that Kara Lawson had ever coached as a true freshman. I don't want to equate it to, but everything comes back to the Jaguars, since that is the team. If you're new around here, that is the team that I cover on a regular basis. It's kind of like Travis Hunter. Like, the Jags are supposed to be all about Travis Hunter and to an extent Brian Thomas Jr. And then they were like, actually, just kidding. Like, Parker Washington and Jacoby Myers are awesome. And I feel like that's kind of where Duke is at. And it's a credit to Kara Lawson that it was like, oh, okay, we don't have those 2. No problem. Retool. I'm going to bring in somebody off the bench, and here we go.
It's what I keep coming back to about, you know, I know that non-conference slate was rough and they shouldn't have lost to West Virginia or to USF. However, playing that tough non-conference slate allowed Kara to see what the problems were, to see where the holes were, and to make adjustments. Okay, so you put Riley Nelson in the starting lineup. You tell Taina Mare, you have the green light. We need you to score. And now you have what you have. And Toby Fournier is coming into her own. And Ariana Roberson is now, you know, that much more healthier and playing her best basketball. So I think that the limit is high for Duke right now.
Good for the Blue Devils.
The ceiling is the roof.
Oh, the ceiling is the roof. We love to see Mitch get a home first weekend of the NCAA tournament. Let's round out this week's starting 5 with a game that I don't want to say snuck under the radar, but because we had a great weekend slate of games, and I mean, we're recording this on Monday night, and there's 2 marquee top 25 games going down as we're recording between Oklahoma and Vandy, and then Kentucky, or no, it's Kentucky.
Yeah, you got it right.
Yeah,
Kentucky,
okay.
Texas, Oklahoma, Vandy.
Kentucky, Texas, and then Oklahoma, Vandy. Now, to that end, let's talk about the Longhorns, because I feel like Thursday's win over LSU, 77-64, kind of went under the radar a little bit. It's a split in the season series between these 2 teams. LSU won the first game between them in Baton Rouge earlier this season, 70-65. And yet, Mitch, this was a game that was a 1-possession game. There were 5 lead changes in a 2-minute sequence at the end of the first half, if not for a 10-0 run by Texas with 5 minutes left, in which Kim Mulkey became one of the meme of the year candidates with her "We are dumb" viral moment. I'd be remiss if I didn't do it. Go look it up if you haven't. By the way, loved Kim's outfit. I think she's done a really good job of like toning it down this year while still having her flavor. I was really impressed with the denim look. So shout out to Kim Mulkey for that. I said something nice about Kim. But like, here's the thing, like, my biggest takeaway from this game was like, I still believe in LSU, for better or worse. And to be fair, you cannot let Texas shoot 51% in the first half. You shouldn't let anyone shoot more than 50% in general, but especially a Texas team that at times offensively can be a little challenged. And especially a Texas team that, while it's quality over quantity from beyond the arc, they were 4 of 8 from 3-point range. Mm-hmm. I've had this conversation locally here where I'm coming at you from in Jacksonville, Florida, with Special Jennings. Shout out to the Dolphins, by the way, winners of 6 straight, including a dub over Florida Gulf Coast in Fort Myers on Saturday. But like Special has said to me, we can shoot the 3, we just choose not to. And I feel like that's kind of where it is with Vic Schaefer, that they just choose not to shoot the 3 because that is not the best shot for them in their offensive sets, and respect to that. Now, with that said, if you're LSU, you should not be allowing Texas to be making the most of those opportunities. Right. And so I'd like to see a little more defense from the Tigers, but also I would like to see a little bit more of offensive production from that front court with Kate Koval and friends. And at the same time, they out-rebounded Texas 40-34, which is no small task either. So I'm confident in both teams moving forward, but they clearly both have flaws.
Yeah, I think LSU, like, their thing is like they want to get you in a track meet, and they want to, like, all right, let's race to 90 points and see who gets there first. And when the other team can influence their tempo, I think that's when LSU kind of struggles a little bit. And, in this game, like LSU's big problem was they didn't take care of the ball. They had 19 turnovers. And then, like you mentioned, Texas, as we've talked about, is not a good three-point shooting team. But when you give them open looks and allow them to make 4 of 8, that's going to put you in a hole. And Texas did take care of the ball. They only had 10 turnovers. So Texas also got to the line 20 times. LSU just 14.
Right. Which again speaks to that style of play. That's why I brought up the JU reference, because they shot 29 free throws last Thursday. Like, if that's your style, cool.
Yep. And so, I think this was a game where Texas set the tempo and Texas played the game their way, and LSU was not up for that. And so that's why you get the lopsided double-digit margin there. I do think, we saw LSU in Baton Rouge. I would be curious to see how a game like this goes if they meet in Greenville in the SEC tournament.
The Tigers, of course, have Thursday midweek off before they face South Carolina on Valentine's Day, a tradition unlike any other. That rounds out this week's starting 5, which, folks, you know what comes next on this little show.
Pure beef.
And boy, oh boy, do we have some rare grade A beef for you on the Women's Basketball Podcast. First and foremost, want to shout out our friends OG Light Brown. Oh, hold on. I'm not even going to give this shout out because we got to get through the beef, and then we have an announcement. I was going to note our friends at AuditoryFX.com that put that together. Shout out to AuditoryFX.com. The event announcement we're going to save. So now I've really got you hook, line, and sinker, because we have one of the best beefs we have seen in the 2025-2026 women's basketball calendar year. And then we have an event announcement. So let's begin with the beef. And the beef is Mitch Northam against UConn and women's basketball media at large. We have had the conversation on this pod before about the Big East and the state or lack thereof of parity in said league. We've been talking about that since the summer, and it's not to knock UConn, who we did lead last week's show with. In case you missed it, you could go back and listen on demand at OG Triangle Media on YouTube or wherever you get your podcast, the Women's Basketball Podcast. And so we led with UConn because we hadn't led with UConn because UConn's kind of boring, as Mitch noted so eloquently, and the masses were not very happy with us. So, Mitch, tell us about some of your interactions with Husky fans, some national media members that also were engaging in conversations with you that were not giving the Big East its due. Just go ahead, Mitch.
So let me set the table here. So UConn on Saturday plays Butler, right? And the Big East, like many conferences now, they put out these availability reports. And on the UConn availability report, it said that Sarah Strong was out for rest, right? And mind you, I'm okay with that. If you want to rest a player, you want to do load management.
If she's banged up, but she could play, but you're going to be safe, that's fine.
But all these UConn fans were in my mentions talking about how, she had her ankles wrapped against Tennessee, blah, blah, blah. Did she finish the game against Tennessee? Yes. Also, if the ankle injury was that bad, if it was actually an ankle, it would have said ankle on the injury report. When you put rest, that's load management. I don't make the rules, but that's how it is. So anyways, that sets the table. I simply said on Twitter, the bottom of the Big East is so soft that UConn can do load management with its 20-year-old star sophomore in mid-February, which is a luxury that South Carolina, Texas, and UCLA, and any other team in the Power Four, simply does not have. And if you're a UConn fan, so the UConn fans got mad at me for saying this, right? And what are we supposed to do? How, it's not our fault. We're in the Big East. Okay. Also, it kind of is. If we're being honest, UConn, if you wanted to be in the ACC that badly, did you see what SMU did? You could have been SMU.
You could be in the Big 12. Anyone can be in the Big 12. Ask you.
Yeah. You've been playing footsie with the Big 12 for 10 years. Yeah. Okay. So I don't want to hear that either. And then I kind of went down the line and I'm like, okay, So if we look at the Big East, Butler is 8th in the net among Big East teams. So we're going to call them the 8th best team in the Big East. Does that sound right to you?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So then I compared them to the 8th best teams in the other Power 4 leagues per the net. In the Big Ten, that's USC. In the SEC, that's Tennessee. In the Big 12, that's Utah. In the ACC, that's Clemson. Those 4 teams are NCAA tournament teams. Clemson and Utah are kind of on the bubble, but they're NCAA tournament teams. Butler ain't sniffing the WBI, CIT, whatever. Like whatever
Don't you put that on Daytona's name. I'm just kidding. I don't even
whatever
know.
third tier tournament, like it's not happening, right? So there's that disparity too. And then everybody, the reply I got a lot was, well, South Carolina could have rested somebody against so and so and so and so, and then they blow out Tennessee on Sunday, and they're like, well, they could have rested Tania Latson in that game, but they didn't, because Dawn Staley knows that in the SEC anybody can get got on any night, and so you can't afford to sit your superstar player against the 8th best team in the league. And everybody was like, well, UCLA could have rested Lauren Betts against Rutgers. I mean, okay, probably, yeah, they could have, but I'll say they didn't. Also, Rutgers is the worst team in the Big Ten, not the 8th worst team, right? 8th best team. So
Lauren Betts, by the way, did only play 14 minutes against Rutgers, but she had 11 points. But she did play. So let the
right. So then everybody's telling me like, oh well, it's different in the Big East because we only have 11 teams, and all these other conferences have 18 and 16 teams.
Big 12 had 9 like 5 minutes ago, but
no. Like this is the top 8. Everybody has a top 8. Like you're 8th. This was the 8th best team, not the 3rd worst team. Okay. So then I get into again, I don't really have a problem with the load management thing. My overall point is that a team like UCLA couldn't do this weekend. Just look at the schedule against Michigan. Texas couldn't do this against LSU. Duke wasn't going to do this against Louisville, and so on and so on and so on. And so that's just my overall point is UConn has this luxury by playing in the Big East that other teams do not have. And that luxury is they get to kind of rest a little bit in January and February and gear up for the NCAA tournament, right? And so if Sarah Strong has a little tight ankle, she ain't got to go because you're playing Butler and you go win by 50 anyways. So whatever, it's fine. You don't have to play Sarah Strong. And so that's my overall point. And then it kind of goes back to, and we'll get into this a little bit later, if UConn goes undefeated this year, right, and wins the title, and that'll be great. I'm not trying to invalidate their undefeated season or title or anything. But if we compare this team to the last team who went undefeated and ran the table, which was 2024 South Carolina, it shouldn't be a question. South Carolina's run was more impressive. They had to go through the SEC, which the SEC, by the way, is going to get 10 teams into the NCAA tournament this year. The Big East is probably going to get 2. It's probably going to be UConn and Villanova because despite as much as I like Seton Hall, I don't think they're getting in. And that's just the reality. And to
your point, I would like to think that the selection committee would rather see a Clemson or a Utah who is battle tested comparatively to a Seton Hall who has been beating up on the 8th best team in the Big East in Butler for the last 3 months.
Yeah. And I keep going back to this point too, because I have some people in women's basketball media circles who like to just count the Big East as a Power 5 conference.
I told you all this was grade A beef. Continue.
Yes. The Big East is not a power conference. It is not an autonomy conference.
Conference preview show, Mitch would not let us put them in the same conversation.
No.
They were with the mid-majors.
You take UConn out of that league, and they're the 3rd best mid-major league in the country. I'm just going to look at the net real quick right now.
By the way, I do have an Ivy League shout out later in the show. So yes, let's give some flowers to the Ivy, to the A10, which all may have the same amount or more bids to the NCAA tournament than the Big East come March.
So the Big East has 3 teams in the top 65 of the net. You know who else has 3 teams in the top 65? The Ivy. So does the A10. Like, the Summit League has 2 teams in the top 60 of the net. Like, if you take UConn out, this league is a mid-major league, and it is not even the best mid-major league. So there you go. I said what I needed to say. Also, apparently, I would like women's basketball fans at large to make up their minds about what team it is that I hate. Because like a couple of years ago, I was like a marked man in the state of South Carolina. And then it was like
they hated you there for a while.
Last year I hated Kansas State. This year I hate UConn. Sometimes I'm called a UNC homer. Sometimes I'm called a Duke homer. Sometimes I'm called an NC State homer. I hate all of your teams. That's the reality.
I told y'all this was grade A beef. This is fantastic. Mitch brought up a point that we're going to hit here in our pseudo kind of sort of main event. That's kind of going to be a little think piece of its own. But before we get to that, drum roll, please. We are excited to announce our next live program through OG Triangle Media, the women's basketball podcast. I'm not canceling any flights this time, folks. We are coming up to the Triangle for OG Light Bracket Night at Longleaf Swine. It's going to be on Monday, March 16th. Yes, the day after Selection Sunday at Longleaf Swine in downtown Raleigh. Not only do you get to fill out your brackets with us, but Ovius and Gilio are going to be there. You can get your tickets at oglightbracketnight.com. That's OG-Light, L-I-T-E, bracketnight.com. For $49, you get a barbecue buffet, a pint of OG Light, ticket to the show. Yes, live taping, us,
barbecue buffet.
Shows. I mean, I'm so excited. I'm so pumped because I'm actually, well, I shouldn't say I'm upset because I'm going to spend my Sunday here in the home studio. Going to be hosting the Selection Sunday show for ESPN on radio. Then gonna
that's awesome.
Yep, going to turn around 6 hours later, get on a plane, fly up to the great state of North Carolina to hang out with my friends for like 29 hours and then fly on back and see what else is cooking that week in the world of basketball because March will be here. That will be the week of the NCAA tournament. And so very excited to kick off March Madness with you guys. So please, especially if you're in the Triangle area, no excuses. $49. You get the buffet. You get the OG Light beer. You get to hang out with us. A ticket to the show. Come on now. Easy money. And we may even talk about UConn. Maybe.
I might even pick them to win the whole thing. Still doesn't change the fact that you play in a soft conference.
He picked UCLA last week, folks, so maybe it changes. So on the subject of the UConn Huskies, producer Dimitri brought this one up to us. So this idea of from 2014 to 2017, UConn won 111 straight games. And the argument that could be made is that there is greater parity across the board in women's basketball now, across the board in college sports because of NIL, the transfer portal, et cetera, which brings us to NYU. And that is where I turn the floor once again to you, Mitch Northam, to explain what's going on in my beloved Division III of women's college basketball.
Yeah, my beloved Division III too. We are 2 Division III alums here, Ithaca and Salisbury.
Yep. Or the Empire 8 forever. Don't you forget it, folks.
That's right. Yeah, we played football in the Empire 8. Let's see. So yeah, NYU has won, I just want to make sure I get this right, 82 consecutive games with their win on Sunday, 69-58 over Carnegie Mellon, giving Coach Meg Barber and her team ownership of the longest win streak record in Division III NCAA women's college basketball. UConn owns the Division I streak, as you mentioned, at 111 games, which happened between 2014 and 2017, which ended when they lost on a buzzer beater at the Final Four to Mississippi State. And Brianna Stewart was on a lot of those teams. So yeah, producer Dimitri's question was like, can this happen now, right? You know, it's been almost 10 years basically since that UConn run ended. As we've seen, more programs across the country are invested in women's college basketball. The coaches are better overall. We've invested in more coaches. The pool of talent is more spread out. It's not this situation of like how it used to be in the 90s or the 2000s where it was like, UConn, Stanford, Tennessee, Baylor, every year, Notre Dame in the Final Four. Everything's more spread out. And some of that's due to the NIL and transfer portal and rev share and all that good stuff. That is certainly part of the reason why I don't think this can happen now, because there is so much parity in the sport. You look at just like this year, for example, like UConn is undefeated, but you look at some of those other teams, UCLA might run the table in the Big Ten, but they already have a loss. They lost to Texas in non-con. Texas has lost, a couple times in SEC play. South Carolina has lost in SEC play. And not even lost to like South Carolina lost to Oklahoma. Like they didn't lose to like LSU, or they did lose to Texas once, but you get my point. So I think back to the Big East thing now, I think the only way this can happen today, because to talk about a multi-season long winning streak, you need a national contending program, one that is a consistent Death Star, so to speak. So you're talking about UConn, South Carolina, you could throw UCLA and LSU in that mix, Texas, these teams that we keep seeing in the Final Four and on that stage, right? It's in a lot of those Power Four conference now, because those leagues are so bloated, and because you have UCLA and Michigan in the same conference, and you have Texas and South Carolina in the same conference. I think it's really hard to go through a Power Four conference schedule unscathed now. Back to my 2024 South Carolina point, I think that's what's so impressive about that particular undefeated season.
And even then, they needed a buzzer beater from Camila Cardoso in the SEC tournament to remain undefeated.
Yep. The SEC,
only three she ever took in her career, folks, was a buzzer beater 3. So they literally needed an act of God to stay undefeated in SEC play.
Basically ended Kelly Harper's tenure in Tennessee. So the SEC is a league where anyone can get got. Like we've seen Vanderbilt like rise up and beat some of the big contenders this year. Kentucky is a team to be reckoned with. And then you have kind of the three elites in Texas, LSU, and South Carolina. Oklahoma is a team that beat South Carolina this year. So you go on down the line. The Big Ten is another league where anybody can get got. Like Iowa, for a second, looked like the best team in the conference. And then they just lost
47 minutes to get to it. But yes, a great example of they looked like they were going to be a national title contender. And then all of a sudden, Taylor McCabe, who would have thought was the ultimate cog in the machine and the glue that held everything together, she tears her ACL. And that's all we're going to talk about Iowa today.
So I think it almost has to be, for this to happen again, it can only really be UConn. Because
it can only be UConn. And I do want to note this. I just pulled up, since the COVID pandemic canceled both the 2020 and 2021 Final Fours in women's Division III basketball, outside of NYU and Smith meeting the last 2 finals, and Smith was also a Final Four participant in 2023, no other team in the last 4 years has gone, or actually I take that back, Transylvania. They're the only other team that has gone to the Final Four multiple times in the last 4 seasons. And so that means that somebody had to lose at some point in time. And so that's where I think that coupled with, and I saw this firsthand when the Columbia men came here to Florida to play North Florida, there's a player from NYU who transferred across New York City to go play for Hubdy and Friends up in Morningside Heights. And I think you're going to continue to see, especially after Duncan Robinson's success leaving Division III to go to Michigan. I know that was a nice little Cinderella story for a lot of folks, but with this advent of the transfer portal and the age we live in, I think a lot of these NYU players that are a part of this team right now are going to get plucked by someone next year. They are going to have a bag thrown at them. And God bless them if they stay and they say, we're building something here, we're not leaving. But I can tell you this, at the very least, an assistant coach or two are going to get plucked from what are they? The Purple Ivies? I should know this.
They're the Violets.
The Violets. There it is. Thank you. Sorry. I have a lot of friends who went to NYU, so they're going to hate me for that. Point is, in this day and age, I just don't know how sustainable roster construction is year over year. I've heard it from so many coaches. So have you, Mitch. You are building a roster for this year. You are no longer building a program, even in women's basketball, where players have to stay 3 seasons before they go professional. Like, it's just the reality of it.
As Joe Giglio likes to say, it's a year-to-year proposition. But yeah, I mean, back to the Division I conversation, like, it can only happen for a team like UConn because you have, sorry, Big East, a really soft conference schedule where you can have just 20 or 18 circle wins. I don't know how many league games they play. And, you know, you might have a tough non-conference schedule or whatever, but like that gives you a runway to be able to do that. But even still, I would be surprised if UConn ever put together a streak like they had with the Stewie teams again, because of all the things that we've talked about, because of roster construction, and because of, it's a year-to-year thing. I mean, even UConn has players who transfer in and out, right? So, you know, like it's just hard to keep talent together. You know, and like after this year, like this team is going to lose AZ Fudd, and they're going to lose Sarah Williams, and you know, they might have some transfers or whatever. Like Sarah Strong is still going to be there, right? But who's going to be around her? I'm sure they'll put together a really good team that's capable of contending for the Final Four again. But is it going to be a team that goes undefeated again for back-to-back seasons? So, you know, I mean, South Carolina, like, just to go back to them real quick, you know, that previous season, 22-23, they were undefeated going into the Final Four until they got by Caitlin Clark. So, you know, that's a 2-year stretch where they lost 1 game. And I don't know that we'll see that again. You know, that was kind of a rare South Carolina team where, like, they were the freshies and, like, they had been together for years and, like, they weren't going to split up, right? They kind of made this pact. I think that's getting rarer and rarer in college basketball.
And speaking of loyalty, speaking of packs, let's hit our next sort of kind of main event. More so, we just need to hit this one as a standalone conversation before we get to making money with Mitch and our picks for this week in women's college basketball. And that is the very latest when it comes to the WNBA CBA negotiations. For the first time in 6 weeks, the league has actually proposed some new proposal to the Players Association, housing some type of provision. We'll get into exactly what it means, maybe, but that was a big, hotly contested talking point, and throughout the discourse between the players union and the league, that was something that was debated. That is included in this latest proposal. However, the league has proposed that players receive on average over 70% of net revenue, which is defined as revenue after deducting expenses. The latest proposal includes a $5.65 million salary cap for 2026. That's up $1.5 million. It would grow in subsequent years in line with the revenue growth. But that, once again, goes back to this idea, Mitch, of what type of revenue, the net revenue versus the gross revenue, which is prior to taking out operating expenses, which is what the players say they want. Will they ultimately get there?
I don't know. This is, I guess, like, you know, making the concession on the housing thing, and some other parts there, team facilities. That's good progress, I suppose. It seems like the revenue sharing thing is a place where the league isn't budging. I'm just reading from my colleague Heather Burns at USA Today.
Go Hawks.
Who writes, nothing has changed in terms of revenue sharing or player salaries. The WNBA is offering more than 70% of league and team net revenue. The Players Union has asked for 30% of gross revenue. The salary cap would be $5.65 million per year, rising with league revenues. So yeah, that's where we're at. I still find it hard to believe that we're going to get to a point where we don't play games.
I don't think we're going to. I think that ultimately this idea of gross versus net, already the net revenue isn't, I mean, it's a significant step forward. And I understand it's not the step that the players union wants, but a 15% net versus 30% gross, I've seen some people float on the timeline. Like, if you could get to 20% net, I think that's the compromise that the players union ultimately, like, and again, I don't have any intel on that, but like, that's what I've seen. Fans have said, okay, let's just get to the 20% net. Let's get the salary cap to where it's proposed, maybe slightly higher, and then we just keep it moving. So long as the housing provision is in there, some of the other ancillary items like just keep it moving. And I think that now the question becomes the timeline. It took 6 weeks for the league to get this proposal back to the players union. And so as someone who is planning a wedding and is constantly afraid if I don't answer an email in 2 hours that I'm going to have my vendor pulled away from me, the fact that the league feels like they could wait 6 weeks to send that latest proposal says to me they think they have time. And obviously it's more on the league that they need to have games being played than the players union, which is where, while yes, the players union continues to say we are far apart or we aren't close. This says to me that the league thinks differently, whether that's naive or not.
I think the league is playing chicken. I think that they believe that the top 20-ish paid players can afford to strike, but the rest of the player pool can't. And the league is betting on the top talent, the leadership on that Players Association board, not putting the rest of the players in a work stoppage situation. And I would just tell the WNBA, you should ask the NWSL and the NBA, for that matter, and the U.S. women's national team how that all worked out. Because those players are going to be willing to strike.
Yeah. And even if they don't strike, in the case of the women's national soccer team, they sued the federation. And that was for a litany of other things. I don't think we'd reach that point in the here and now, but it is certainly something down the line. But you also have people like Caitlin Clark going on NBC and saying we need to play games, and going to Team USA camp and saying we need to play games. The most marketable face of your league says we need to play games. And as we discussed on last week's episode, she doesn't say anything that is not calculated and hasn't been discussed. And therefore, I would like to think that we will have games. Also, since we didn't get a chance to discuss it, we get the viral Instagram story of Kelsey Plum is pushing Nafisa Collier in her wheelchair through the airport. Then they post a picture saying that
they didn't even make it. What happened?
On the plane. So what? Like, no one ever told us what happened. Like, did the plane not take off? Like, I want to know.
I think they overslept.
But it said that. But they showed a picture that they got in. They must have.
That's what I mean. Like, was it New York City traffic? Was it? I don't know.
They were in the airport and they were on a plane. So maybe the plane had to deplane. I don't know. Point being, it is February 9th as we're recording this show, and we still have not had an expansion draft. We still have not had free agency. Mitch and I are fully embracing this idea of it will be the ultimate March Madness where we have all of these things regarding the 2026 WNBA season going on at the same time as the NCAA tournament. Oh, and also Team USA will be in action in the second week of March.
Yeah, that's right, messy.
To add insult to injury, let's review your picks from last week.
Oh, boy.
Regression.
It was not a good week.
It is real for the Iowa Hawkeyes and for Mitch Northam's picks. He is now 22-14 on the season after going 0-3 last week. Vandy really was the dagger, man. Like, happy for you, Michaela Blakes. Like, happy for the whole crew in Nashville, but come on, Mitch, man. Not good. Not good. How are we going to get back on track this week?
Well, I'm going to put my faith in Vanderbilt once more.
Yeah. We are to be fair last week. That was part of what screwed you. So
that's right. So this is Thursday night, 7:30 p.m. Eastern on SEC Network Plus. Texas is at Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt currently a 9.5-point underdog. I will take the Fighting Michaela Blakeses to cover.
Let's go. And then we move to our favorite honorary power conference, the A10, baby.
That's right. This is on Saturday. I'm going to be at this game. Richmond is at Davidson. The last time these two teams played, it went to triple overtime. And yeah, so Davidson, I think, still kind of a dark horse, in the A10. They're going to have to win the A10 tournament to get into the NCAA tournament. However, Richmond is one of two teams in the A10, especially after beating George Mason, that has an at-large resume, Rhode Island being the other one. So this one is on Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN Plus. I got Richmond as a 5.5-point road favorites, and I'm going to take the Spiders to win and cover.
Vegas knows something we don't. Are you telling me, Mitch, that there's a chance we could see 4 teams from the A10 in the NCAA tournament if Richmond runs the table?
No, I think your max is 3 because Richmond and Rhode Island are the two that have at-large worthy resumes. Like, despite Mason's success in conference play, they didn't do enough in the non-con to have the at-large resume. So if Mason or Davidson wins your A10 tournament and Rhode Island and Richmond keep stacking these regular season wins, you could see a 3-bid A10.
Love to see it. We are also going to see plenty of teams from the ACC making the NCAA tournament, potentially even hosting, not something we thought a month and a half ago. And that culminates with a nice little triangle rivalry showdown on Sunday. Yep,
I will be at this game as well. This is UNC at Duke, battle of our Tobacco Road Blue Bloods. Sunday, 1 p.m. Eastern, national TV audience, ABC. Duke is favored by 8.5 points. And part of me thinks that's a lot. The other part of me thinks Duke is that good. And so I'm going to take Duke to cover 8.5.
What's the total is what I want to know. I'm sure it's not out yet because it's way too early. But
I haven't seen an over-under total yet, but folks, when you see that number, you take the under.
Pound it, folks. Carol Lawson is the Kirk Ferentz of women's basketball. I don't care that they've won 15 straight games. Just play the under.
I mean, Courtney Banghart is not far off. This is like Kirk Ferentz versus Pat Narduzzi.
Beautiful. Who both, by the way, would have loved the Super Bowl this year.
Yes.
And probably did because punters are people too, and kickers are as well. To recap, Mitch's 3 picks this week as he tries to get back on track after an 0 for week last week. Texas at Vandy, the Commodores 9.5-point underdogs. Mitch has them covering the spread. Richmond, a 5.5-point road favorite at Davidson on Saturday, and then Duke, an 8.5-point home favorite at Cameron Indoor against UNC Sunday at 1. Is that getting the Ryan Rebecca Holly treatment?
I would assume so since it's on ABC.
I'm assuming it is as well.
Yeah.
I know Ryan's been calling some NBA games as well. All right, folks, it's time for last call. Any of the storylines that we may have missed throughout the course of this hour-long program. Usually we try to keep these as quick as we possibly can. But this first one, I do just want to address head-on, Mitch. At this time, it's February 9th. It's a little after 8 o'clock Eastern. I'm sure more reporting will come out before this podcast is released. But yes, unfortunate, disgusting. I don't even know how to describe the incident that occurred in Doral County in South Florida between Los Angeles Sparks guard Rakea Jackson and her now former boyfriend, Atlanta Falcons edge rusher James Pierce. When I was at the NFL Combine last year, Mitch, there were 2 pieces of information that everywhere I went, whether I was getting coffee with a friend in media, getting lunch with a friend in the scouting world, talking to a friend who's a coach on an NFL staff, there were 2 pieces of information that people just readily kept volunteering to me. I didn't even ask for it. Number 1 was the impending acquisition of ESPN and the Walt Disney Company of the NFL Network. And number 2 was that James Pierce is an absolute piece of trash. Those were the 2 pieces of information over the 4 days that I was in Indianapolis. Everyone and their mother couldn't wait to tell you what they heard about Disney's getting NFL Network. Oh, and by the way, I wouldn't go near him with a 39.5-foot pole, to the point that I did have a scout say to me, and I did not know the extent of the toxicity in that relationship, which apparently has now ended after 3 years. And that's part of why James Pierce slammed his Lamborghini into Rakea Jackson's car in the middle of traffic in South Florida on a Saturday in which Unrivaled was played. Apparently, it was known that their relationship was so toxic that there had been some law enforcement involved at a previous juncture. And again, I knew that they dated and I knew he was a POS, but I did not realize until I literally had someone just tell me that in February. And then I went to a lunch the next day and somebody else brought it up. And these are 2 people who are involved in the background checks of prospects. And so, yeah, it's a long way of me saying that here we are, 365 almost days to the week that I head to Indianapolis every year for the Combine. And both of those things have come to fruition. ESPN did indeed buy the NFL Network, and James Pierce and Rakea Jackson's relationship is as toxic as hell. And I'm glad she is safe, and I hope she's doing okay. And that's all I'm going to say about it. But yeah, just it's crazy.
Yeah, I don't really have anything to add. I hope that Rakea Jackson is safe and is safely out of this relationship. And James Pierce, I read the police report. Apparently it said like he hit a cop with his car.
Yep.
So he might not be playing in the NFL anymore.
Yeah, I said that to Kevin. Kevin was like, he's like, maybe I'm jaded, maybe I'm desensitized, but like Tyreek Hill hit his pregnant girlfriend. He's still playing in the league.
Yep.
The world we live in. So had to just address that. Our thoughts are obviously with Rakea, because just wanted to get out of that situation. It's not great. Some happier news. The Big 12 is a hot mess. Speaking of hot messes, but in the best way possible. Shout out to Colorado. They upset TCU as Jade Matogallo's game-winning 3 with 2 seconds left propels the Buffs over the Horned Frogs. This conference is just so dysfunctional, and I love it in the best way, Mitch, because once upon a time when we did our conference preview show, we literally had a segment called Say Something Nice About the Big 12. Well, the top 4 teams in their league are ranked, and you could make the argument that the next 4 following them in the standings are all going to make the NCAA tournament too. And hey, listen, the next 2, even 3, I'd throw BYU in the conversation for being on the bubble. What say you?
Yeah, I mean, the Big 12, I would say the thing to watch there is like they're getting into a little bit of a situation where like I don't know how many teams are going to be hosting in the first round. And now for TCU, I mean, if you fall out of the top 16, hey, guess what? If you make it to the Sweet 16, that's at home. Like it's in Fort Worth. So, but I think at the last bracketology that I did at USA Today, which was last week, I think I had TCU in the top 16, but none of the other Big 12 teams. And so I'll have to wait until Wednesday when I kind of do the math again, but I don't know if TCU is going to fall out. West Virginia might be playing their way into that situation. That win over Duke just keeps looking better and better. Shout out to the Greenbrier 5. And Baylor. They also haven't won over Duke.
And Baylor also squeaked one out over our friends at Arizona State, 67-64. The Molly Millers are an interesting scenario in that, like, they were one of the last 3 undefeated teams. And much like their Big 12 counterpart, Iowa State, I don't really know what's happened in the last month and a half, outside of attrition to the roster and just the reality of the Big 12 settling in.
I think it's just like they didn't really play anybody in non-con. And so, you start the season 15-0 and then you get in the conference play and it's like, oh, maybe we're not as good as our record says. I think I had them among the first 4 out the last time I did a bracketology.
Which, hey, like that's a win in year 1. I'd give that to Molly and friends.
Right now they're a bubble team. So, they need to stack as many regular season wins as they can and maybe – get 1 or 2 in the conference tournament, and then, the chips fall over the MA.
You mentioned the Ivy League has 3 teams in the top 60 of the net. The Princeton Tigers remain ranked in the AP top 25. They came in at number 24 this week, but Columbia and Harvard each just a game back. Brown, 2 games back of the Ivy League lead, and so it'll be an exciting madness to be had in the Ivy League here as the calendar gets ready to flip to March.
Yeah, I think the Ivy is a 1-bid league this year, unless Princeton doesn't win Ivy Madness. If Columbia or Harvard comes out on top in that, then you're going to see Princeton, because Princeton is good enough. They have the resume to have an at-large bid. So that could be a bid stealing situation. Because unfortunately, Columbia and Harvard just don't have the resumes to get, to be in the at-large conversation. Like last year, they were all 3. Kind of above the bubble, so to speak. This year, the other 2 not doing as well as Princeton. So Princeton has the resume. If they don't win Ivy Madness, though, you could see 2. Yeah.
And then that's a bid stealer from maybe that messy, fun Big 12. Before we give you our schedule for the week ahead of our reporting prowess and what's coming up for Mitch and I do want to pour one out for the Washington Post, and Mitch kind of going to give you the floor again, given that it is your pseudo hometown paper. It's extremely unfortunate with the sports department being all but gutted, and one of the better publications in following women's hoops over the last, 60 some odd years.
Yeah. I would just say, a lot has already been said about the Washington Post. For me personally, like growing up in Maryland and going to college there, more than ESPN or even what Sports Illustrated used to be, working at the Washington Post was like my dream job. Like having, especially the beat that I think Kareem Copeland used to have, which was basically covering Navy football, covering Maryland women's basketball, the Mystics, and the Georgetown men. Like that's an awesome beat. Awesome. I would have loved that. I'm
gonna blame Ed Cooley for the demise of Georgetown, and why that beat maybe isn't as illustrious. But continue.
Yeah, just so many great, like they were the standard of the, American newspaper sports section for so many years. I mean, so many great Hall of Fame writers coming out of there, decades ago. But like even recently, like that, it was still a really good sports section, sports department. When you talk about, I just mentioned Kareem Copeland, Barry Cervluga, Candace Buckner, just a lot of really great, talented people there. And now it's dead. And that sucks. And to be straight up, like I canceled my subscription. Like I read the Washington Post for its sports coverage. That's what I was there for. And I think it's wild that somebody like, I don't want to get too political here, but like Jeff Bezos paid millions and millions of dollars for the Melania documentary that nobody's watching. And it would have cost him a fraction of that to keep the sports section going. And the sports section is a unifier. Like you can leave the Republican Democrat stuff out when you come to the sports section. Like you just want to read about the Wizards and the Nationals and, like the Terps and whatever. Like, I just don't get it. So I don't really understand the decision and the business model, but I would say this to all of our listeners. If you have sports content out there that you like and consume on a regular basis, support it with your money, or it goes away. So.
And with that said, we appreciate you listening to us here on the Women's Basketball Podcast and OG Triangle Media. Mitch, where will people be able to find you and your coverage this week for USA Today, which you should also support if you have the means to do so, because Mitch, Heather, and the team over there are doing great work when it comes to covering all things women's sports. Yeah, click, read, usatoday.com. I wrote today, I have a notebook over there. I wrote about Ariana Robertson and the player that got suspended in the Big South for fighting, and also wrote about the trade and Unrivaled that we had today. Courtney Williams and Tanai Rivers on the move. There's a lot of rumors that that's opening the door for an Angel Reese return, I read. I've also heard a rumor about this being maybe a test run for how Courtney Williams and Paige Beckers play together. But ooh, very interesting. Very interesting. But where would that be, Windhorse Meme Fingers? Who was Courtney Williams' college coach? Where did she go? That's probably the best. I was so worried we were going to end on something sad. I love that we're ending on something positive. And which games are you going to this week? I will be at Davidson, Richmond, and Duke, North Carolina. I don't care to see SMU in person again. So I'm not going to go to SMU at UNC on Thursday night. I will be at home with the baby. Sorry, Fair Lady Barnes. You don't win this one. I'm headed off on vacation. I will see you all when I get back. Women's lacrosse season officially has kicked off here, the lacrosse capital of the South in Jacksonville, FLA. Shout out to Tara Singleton and the crew. They got it done over the weekend. And looking forward to their next game, which won't be till the 21st when I am back against Ryder. And of course, ASUN play continues here in the River City. I do actually want to give a shout out. I know it was like with regards to scheme, but to Special and what JU's been able to do. They have Tatum Brown, who was the 91st overall recruit in the class of 2025. She was ASUN Freshman of the Week again this week. Priscilla Williams, McDonald's All-American, very well traveled. If you know college hoops, you probably know Priscilla because she's been playing everywhere from Oregon to the aforementioned USF to Syracuse. ASUN Player of the Week again. They just knocked off Florida Gulf Coast. So a lot of good mid-major basketball being played here in Florida. We won't talk about those Power 4 teams in the state of Florida. We're just going to keep it moving. Until next week, he is Mitch. I am Mia, saying we will catch you later. Deuces.